So, you don't have many friends, or maybe you don't have any at all. People notice, and they might comment. They say things like, "You need to be more social," or "Why don't you hang out more?" They assume something is wrong, that you're shy, that you're insecure, that you're missing out. But what if I told you that having very few friends isn't always a bad sign? In fact, it might say something very specific and very rare about how your mind works. You see, most people want to belong. They chase approval. They want to be liked. They want to be chosen. They fear being left out. But some people, like you, don't seem to follow this pattern. You're not panicked when the group leaves without you. You don't feel the need to be invited everywhere. And even when you are around people, you often feel like you're watching the scene instead of being part of it. You hear what people say, but also what they don't say. You notice the tone, the fake laughs, the way people act one way but mean another. And you wonder, is this really connection? You're avoiding situations that don't feel real. You can't force fake friendships. You can't fake your reactions. You don't want to just fit in. You want to feel something real, or nothing at all. Now, I'm not here to flatter you, and I'm not going to say that being alone is always easy. Sometimes it's confusing. Sometimes it makes you wonder if something's wrong with you. But what if the reason you have very few friends is because your brain is wired for something deeper? Psychologists have studied patterns like yours, and when someone consistently chooses solitude or keeps their circle very small, it's not always a sign of weakness. Often, it's a sign of clarity, of strength, of a personality that resists what's fake, what's loud, what's shallow. When you don't need attention to feel alive, and when you'd rather be alone than pretend, that says something powerful about who you are. So let's talk about the 5 traits that people like you often have. Traits that aren't always obvious, but once you hear them, they'll make a lot of sense. And they might help you understand why you walk alone. Not because you're lost, but because the usual path is too crowded with noise. Let's begin. Most people build their self-esteem on what others give them. Compliments, attention, likes, laughs. They need to be seen to feel like they matter. But you seem to function differently. You don't need others to constantly reassure you. You might not even enjoy praise that feels forced or exaggerated. And you don't panic when people pull away. That's because your self-worth comes from inside. From a young age, maybe you learned how to depend on yourself. Maybe you were the kind of kid who solved your own problems or felt older than your age. You figured things out on your own. And over time, you stopped expecting people to understand you. You became your own support system. While others rely on their social group to feel okay, you often feel more okay when you're just by yourself. This makes you less likely to follow the crowd. You don't give in to pressure easily. If everyone's going left and you feel like going right, you go right, even if they mock you, even if they don't understand. You don't bend your values just to avoid standing out. That takes strength. Not loud strength, but silent strength. It's the kind people don't always notice, but you carry it with you. Of course, this independence sometimes makes you seem distant. People might say, "You don't open up," or "You keep to yourself." But that's not the full story. It's not that you don't feel. It's that you don't perform. You won't fake closeness just to make someone else comfortable. You won't say what they want to hear just to fit in. Your sense of self is already stable. You don't need others to hold it for you. This strong sense of independence isn't coldness, it's clarity, and it's rare. That's why people with this trait often end up with fewer friends. Not because they're bad at relationships, but because they're not desperate for them. When you already know your worth, you don't chase what doesn't recognize it. Most social groups function on the surface. People talk about what's trending, who said what, who wore what. They jump from topic to topic, laugh at things they don't even find funny, and go along with whatever keeps the conversation moving. But for you, that kind of interaction feels empty. You don't enjoy small talk. You don't enjoy drama. You crave depth. When you speak, you like to mean it. When you listen, you're really listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak. You don't want to know how someone's day was just to be polite. You want to know how they really feel, what they're hiding, what they're afraid of, what they're dreaming about. And not everyone is ready for that kind of honesty. This is why most social settings feel off to you. You can sense when people are faking it, laughing too loudly, talking too much. You can hear the boredom behind their energy, the pressure behind their words, and you don't want to be part of that performance. You'd rather sit in silence than play pretend. When you do connect with someone on a real level, it's different. You go all in. You remember small details. You feel what they're feeling. You ask questions that actually matter. But these connections don't happen often because you don't fake it to make it happen. You wait. You observe. You look for sincerity. Some people find you too intense. They say you overthink things, but you're not overthinking. You're trying to find truth in a world full of noise. You're trying to connect on a level that most people avoid. You're not trying to be deep for attention. You're deep because your mind won't settle for shallow. Being alone doesn't scare you. In fact, you often prefer it. While others need background noise, constant chats, and non-stop activity, you find peace in quiet. You like your own company. You enjoy thinking without being interrupted. You can spend an entire day by yourself and not feel bored. That's because solitude, for you, isn't loneliness. It's space. This ability to be alone and actually enjoy it is rare. Most people feel uncomfortable when they're by themselves. They reach for their phones, they turn on the TV, they text someone, anyone, just to feel connected. But you don't do that out of habit. You can sit with your thoughts. You can be still. You can reflect. Solitude allows your creativity to rise. You think more clearly when no one's watching. You notice ideas, images, patterns. You might write, draw, play music, or just sit and imagine. There's something sacred in the silence. You don't need people to entertain you. You don't need constant input to feel alive. You've built your own world inside, and it's full of color. Of course, this confuses others. They think you're isolating, that you're pushing people away. But that's not it. You just value your energy, and you don't want to spend it on people who drain it. You rest in your own presence. You're not lonely. You're full. Not everyone earns your trust, and that's not because you're cold. It's because you've learned, either from experience or instinct, that not all people are safe to let in. Maybe you've been hurt before. Maybe people have let you down. Or maybe you just naturally sense when someone's energy doesn't feel right. Either way, you don't open the door easily. You watch, you listen, you wait. And if something feels off, you pull back. This is what psychologists might call a high trust threshold. It means you don't trust blindly. You don't give people access to your thoughts, emotions, or time unless they've shown you they deserve it. And even then, you still watch for consistency. You don't assume someone is safe just because they're nice once. You look for patterns. You look for truth over time. You also have strong boundaries. You know what drains you. You know what feels fake. You can sense when someone's trying to use you, copy you, or push past your comfort, and you don't allow it. While other people say yes just to avoid awkwardness, you've learned to say no, not loudly, not rudely, but clearly. You protect your space like your peace depends on it, because it does. This makes your social circle very small. But that's the point. You don't collect people. You don't chase validation. You want people around you who are real, reliable, and respectful. Anything less, you walk away. You'd rather be alone with your peace than surrounded by fake energy. Sometimes people call this being too guarded. But what they don't see is that your boundaries are the reason you're still sane. The reason you haven't lost yourself in all the noise. The reason your energy isn't scattered in 1,000 places. You know how to protect your emotional space. And in a world that constantly pushes you to overshare, overgive, and overextend, that is a strength, not a weakness. You see more than you say. You don't interrupt. You don't need to dominate a room. You're the person sitting quietly, watching the flow of everything. How people talk, how they shift their body, how they avoid certain topics. You catch the things most people miss. The looks, the timing, the silences. And that's because your mind isn't just taking in information, it's processing it deeply. You think a lot, not in an anxious way, but in a curious, reflective way. You replay conversations. You wonder about what people really meant. You ask yourself why you reacted the way you did. Why someone's words hit you. Why you felt that shift in energy. You study people, but you also study yourself. This introspection makes you wise, not book smart necessarily, but emotionally aware. You understand patterns. You understand emotion. You understand pain, even if you don't always talk about it. That's because you've spent time facing your own. You don't run from discomfort. You let yourself feel it. You examine it. You learn from it. This kind of awareness can be isolating. When you walk into a room and see everything happening beneath the surface, it's hard to relax and just go with the flow. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unfeel what you've felt. So instead of jumping in, you often stay back. Not because you're scared, but because your brain is busy processing. People sometimes misread this. They think you're shy, or stuck up, or bored. But you're not bored. You're absorbing. You're decoding. You're making sense of things they haven't even noticed. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more videos, self-exploring videos in the future.